In this video, we're diving into 5 of the most affordable cars that you can buy under $30,000 for 2025. And some of the cars in this list might just surprise you. But before we get into that, my name is John with Blackbird Productions. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. On this channel, I create videos like this every week. And I also make other car-centric content that you might be interested in. So if you're into cars as much as I am, definitely consider subscribing. And while you're down there, also don't forget to leave a like on this video. That tells me whether or not I should make more content similar to this or not. Thank you in advance. All right, first car up on our list is the Polestar 2. And you've heard me say this across other videos that I've made similar to this one, but the Polestar 2 is an unforgettable deal right now. And you could actually buy one under $30,000 with low mileage. That's actually another thing I forgot to mention. A lot of the cars, well, majority of the cars on this list are actually under the 20,000 mile marker in terms of just mileage. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So they're not used and abused sort of cars that we're diving into today. But anyway, Polestar 2, solid. It's Polestar's flagship car, and if you can get the performance model for under $30,000, I highly doubt you can. But if you can find one, or maybe if you wait a year or two, that one might also be under $30,000. But anyway, the particular trim that I included in this video is the single motor long range model. And there's many different trims for Polestar, but this particular one was the one that I found in my research. The Polestar 2 long range single motor gets 270 miles as part of the EPA estimated range, and it gets 288 horses. And if you opt in for the dual motor, which I found a couple that, believe it or not, are actually around that $30,000 mark, but if you get the dual motor, you'll be getting 401 horsepower, which would put it toe to toe to the outgoing Model 3 Performance, which both of those cars actually compete against each other, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get later on into the list. Next one is the BMW i3, another one of my great picks, and it's actually a car that I owned for a little while before I sold it to my parents. But for this list, I've included specifically the BMW i3 with the Rex configuration. So that's the range extender something. I actually forgot exactly what it stood for, but it's essentially the range extender component that it comes with. And I've always seen the BMW i3 as more of like a hybrid with like electric features. But essentially you're getting 2 powertrains with that one. You're getting your traditional electric powertrain, and then you're also getting a petrol powertrain. And combined, you'll get roughly 200 miles of range. It's also worth pointing out that the battery is pretty small in this one compared to the other ones on this list, but it is the highest trim of the BMW i3. The battery size is 120 amp hours. But again, combined with the gas component, you'll be getting 200 miles of range, which is below the industry average. But I mean, you could find this car for 15, 16, 17K all day long. And it comes in very, very low, below that $30,000 threshold, which I think makes this car a very, very affordable option for a lot of people, especially if you live in the city. The other thing I like about the i3 is the looks. I guess it just depends on who you talk to, but some people say it's just like the ugliest car they've ever seen. And then some people like me actually see some charm in it. And it's very, very unique for BMW. It's almost like the BMW i8's fat cousin, which is crazy because I've owned both cars and both of them are almost the same in the inside. Like they have the same steering wheel, almost the same infotainment layout, and they just feel like very, very close cousins to each other. So if you ever get a chance to drive a BMW i3, it's pretty much the same as an i8, minus the looks, obviously, the exterior styling. Next up is the Mercedes-Benz EQB 250. And this one is one that I've never talked about on this channel before, but it was one I was actually shopping around for before I got my Tesla Model 3 Performance. But essentially, it's Mercedes-Benz's take on the electric crossover. And while I say this car is a crossover, calling it a crossover is pretty like subjective compared to like what you may have come from before or what you have experience with in terms of just overall size for an SUV. But I think this feels more like a full-size SUV. Even in person, the car feels very tall and large. But I would say when you step inside, it does feel like a crossover SUV. And one of the things that actually actually caught me off guard was actually the floor, because the floor is just like super flat. I mean, as EVs are, but you don't really notice it until you get into this car, just because it just feels so weird. I don't know. It's definitely something you have to get in and test drive. Mercedes-Benz is actually still selling this car brand new, so you can get a 2025 EQB 250 or 350, which is a slight bump in power. But anyway, with the Mercedes-Benz EQB, you're getting, of course, 250 miles of range in terms of the EPA estimate, hence why they call it the 250. And you're getting 188 horsepower, which is pretty standard, but it's not enough to get into any kind of trouble. Next is the Chevy Bolt EUV. Not to be confused with the Chevy Bolt EV. This one's a little bit different, but they're kind of part of the same family, but I'll explain. The EUV is essentially a slightly larger version than the traditional Bolt. And the reason why I didn't actually include the Bolt on this list is because I like the EUV in terms of styling better than the Bolt, even though the Bolt can definitely get the job done. With the Chevy Bolt EUV, you're getting 257 miles of range, which is also below the 300-mile average, but it's still pretty good for the price. You're also getting 200 horses, which is pretty nice for a car like this in this price segment. This is also a car that I would personally test drive. I've never driven one before, but I have seen them on the road. And I've actually seen the Bolt more on the road than this specific one. So I think it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for like a little tiny SUV sort of thing, I would go with the Bolt. And if you're looking for a little bit more size, I would go with the EUV. With the EUV obviously being a small compact crossover. I say the Bolt EV kind of fits into that category too, but it's a little bit smaller than that. So it's more of like a miniature size crossover sort of thing. I kind of think it's more comparative to the i3 than anything, albeit a little less tall. And of course, the last one on our list is the Tesla Model 3 long range, specifically anything above 2022, because I have to realize some people might be shopping around for EVs and come across this video maybe 2 years down the line. So I'll be talking specifically for the 2022 model year and above that. So think 2022 to 2023. But believe it or not, you can actually buy this car for under 30 grand, and you can find one in pretty mint condition. I found a lot of good examples under 10,000 miles that you can still buy today. But with this car, you're getting Tesla's tried and true dual motor setup, getting you from A to B in 358 miles. And if you go for the performance variant, you're getting a 470 horses, which I think is enough to get in some trouble. That is if you're not careful enough. And since those earlier 2022 models have a lot of different trims, I would opt in specifically for the long range rear wheel drive, because that was the cheapest one that I found. And before we end this video off, I have one honorable mention that I'll quickly run through, and that is the Nissan Ariya. Again, this is another car that I have not driven. I have not been in one specifically, but I have seen them on the road, and I think they're really, really cool cars that are also depreciating into practically nothing within the first 2 years, basically. This is a car that you can find under $30,000 with less than 10,000 miles. And it just seems like a lot of people just lease this car, and now the car is just back on the market. At least that's what I'm seeing, because a lot of these cars have one owner, and a lot of listings that I saw had one owner reports, just detailing all the various service history and stuff like that. But for this list, I've included the Nissan Ariya Venture Plus. And there's, I think, if I count it correctly, I think there's 10 different trims for this car. And I was just trying to find like the best one for the money to provide to you guys, like for this video. So in my research, I found that the Venture Plus was the most optimal in terms of cost, performance, and essentially what you're getting. But with this model, you're getting 304 miles of range and 234 horsepower, which does put it at the average in terms of just EV range, which I think is pretty nice. And again, I think the styling of this car is very, very, let's just say forward thinking for Nissan. I think it's a very, very unique design. The only thing I don't like about it actually, and I'll just say this because it's something that I was thinking about, was the lack of just plastic around it. Obviously with Nissan's cars as well as Honda, they do include like plastic around the wheel well areas. But with this car, it's like all glossy plastic. And for me, I'm just thinking like scratches. So if you do get this car, I would recommend just doing a PPF on it just to keep those areas nice and clean. Anyway, that is the video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel and also leave a like on this video. I would definitely appreciate it. This has been John with Blackbird Productions, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Una guitarra suena como un lamento en la noche.